Welcome to Publishing Power. We are continuing our journey through the 38 story elements with Christina Stanley from Fictionary. Thank you for joining us, Christina.
Hi, Joellen. So we're back again with the 38 fictionary story elements. And today we're going to cover whether your scene is an action scene or a sequel scene and why that's important to know.
That sounds pretty intense. I'm going to let you lead the way.
Okay, so let's talk about an action scene first. So it's a scene where stuff happens. And when it's action, usually you use dialogue or character movement to show the action. The description and character internalization are kept to a minimum in an action scene. And the other thing about the action scene that's important to know is that the action is often driven by the point of view character's goal for that scene. And we covered point of view character's goal in a previous scene, but it's basically what does the point of view character want to achieve for that scene? And then that's going to drive what happens in the action scene.
Okay. So we've got a lot of action going on.
Yeah. And then a sequel scene is the quieter scene where a character is going to react to the events that happened in an action scene. So it can be an emotional reaction, it could be a decision made, or it can be simply thoughts. And then if you do it correctly, what it means is that the reader has time to have a greater connection with your character because they're seeing how they react to all of the action that's previously happened. And it lets them get to know the character a little bit more and see how the character is feeling. And quite often the reader is going to feel the same things.
So this is like the deflate after all the action. Then this is where we take our breathers and connect deeply with our.
Yeah. And I want to be careful with that in that there still has to be tension in a sequel scene. It's not all happy, everything is great. And the tension could be maybe the point of view character is super happy. They think it's wonderful, whatever happened in the action scene, but there's an underlying tension in there that it's not quite as rosy as the character thinks. And so the reader's anxious about it. So you do want to go back to the tension element for your sequel scenes and make sure that there is tension.
Okay. And so we're looking at these to determine that. So these kind of go hand in hand. How do we check on our action and sequel scenes? I know we keep going back through our scenes one by one, but this one is kind of unique in the fact that you're looking for almost a duality between the two.
Yeah, and before we go into how you do it, there's also the scenes can blend. So there can be little mini sequels within an action scene,
Mm-hmm.
and there can be mini action within a sequel scene. So as you go through your story, the action is to look at each scene and just mark it as A for action, S for sequel. And so you know what's the major thing for that scene because no scene is that strictly black and white cut. Of course, there's going to be reactions within a scene and stuff, but what's the major reason for that scene? And is it an action or is it a sequel? And so you go through each one,
Mm-hmm.
and then you look at, again, you want to look at the other elements. Is there conflict? Is there tension? What else is in there that's helping the scene or not helping the scene? And you want to look, how many action scenes do you have in a row without a sequel?
Okay.
And when you get to about 5 or 6, you want to start thinking about, do I need a sequel? Should there be a character reaction? In a thriller genre, you're going to have fewer, and maybe you're going to have more action, and the sequels are poked within. But you still need a breather. When you've had a huge action sequence, there needs to be a breather.
Right.
And in a romance novel, maybe it's a little softer and slower, and you have more sequels. So you need to know your genre and the expectations of your genre. And you can do all that research. It's all out on Google. You can research that. But once you know that, then you're going to look for your pattern of action, action, sequel, action, action, sequel kind of thing.
Exactly. Again, it's a lot of research, but we are learning here. And that's what I love about editing and helping other people write their books is that you do get to learn so much more. And the first time it is tough. It's the learning curve. But then afterwards, you can apply this again and again as you do the sequels to your first book. So again, hang with us, keep hanging in there. We have the 38 story elements, and it sounds like you're going to dig back in, mark them with an A or an S, make sure that you are following the patterns for your genre. And we encourage you, again, there's a lot of information out there. Find 2 or 3 experts that you trust and follow along so that you can be all that you can be. So thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Christina, once again for walking us through the actions and sequel themes.
Thanks, Joellen. See you soon.